The entire next afternoon we took turns holding Jack. I even napped with him next to me on my bed. The nurses continued to tell me that Jack would stay with us until we were ready. But every time a nurse came in, I was scared they were going to say it was time. I couldn't get enough time with Jack. I was never going to be ready to say goodbye. I expected to be released from the hospital that night, so I was on pins and needles knowing I would have to say goodbye soon. My parents came by and both took turns holding Jack. This was their first grandchild in both our families, so I know this was hard on them too. Another nurse came in later and told us that I would be staying another night to make sure there was no infection, and because my right thigh was still fully numb from the epidural. They would be moving me up to the maternity ward, but would put me in an area with the neonatal mothers so I wouldn't have to hear all the babies cry. She told us to let her know when we were ready for them to take Jack, with the understanding that we can request to see him once again when we were in our new room. Or if either of us did not want to say goodbye twice, the other could go into another room and spend as much time with him as needed. We both held him one more time. I hugged him, kissed him, said our goodbyes, not really knowing if that would be our last time. But once the nurse came in and took him, we both lost it and bawled together. It made it so real for me. It was as if he had died again. I knew there was no way I could go through that again, so I told Jory that that was my goodbye, and he agreed. They moved me up to the maternity ward and put me in my own room in the corner. I was so thankful not to have to hear or see any babies, but felt so empty knowing mine was gone. This was not supposed to happen to us. We'd already been through so much for so long just to get pregnant. This was our miracle baby. What happened? I felt like the life had been ripped out of me, and I was only a shell trying to keep it together for Jory. I felt so close to really losing it, but promised Jory I would hold on for his sake. Later that night, my doctor came by and asked if I wanted to go home. He said the results came back, there was no infection. It was definitely incompetent cervix, which can be helped next time we get pregnant, if that ever happens, with a cerclage at 8 to 12 weeks and extra monitoring. Unfortunately, there is no way to know you have incompetent cervix until you go into preterm labor for the first time. He said there was nothing I could have done to prevent this, or to stop the contractions from coming. He said there's absolutely no way I could have known until it was too late. I try to believe him. I'm still trying to believe him. The feeling in my thigh had returned, so we agreed to go home. As they wheeled me out of the hospital, one feeling I had left in my heart ached for Jack. We should be taking him with us. Instead, my arms are empty, and we both cried the entire way home. I don't think either of us have cried so much in our lives. Obviously, 4 years later. It was so hard to be home, especially with my parents staying with us. I could never thank them enough for coming because everything they did for us, but I just wanted to be alone with Jory. Thankfully, they were here to help us keep on track of the things that we needed to handle, like calling the different funeral homes and my work. They left Monday, Labor Day, to go home. One thing I expected to be an issue was the fact that we have different beliefs from my parents and Jory's dad. They're all Mormon, not necessarily practicing, but have the belief that we should all be buried in a cemetery to later one day reclaim our body. Jory and I are not Mormon and do not wish to be buried. We want to be cremated and have set plans for our ashes. So why would we want to do something different with our child? Our parents both took their turns letting us know they had family plots we could have either in Logan or Provo, Utah. We appreciated their offers, however politely declined. We really appreciate them all for not pushing us or questioning our choices. It was definitely not the time or the place to have that conversation. In fact, I was extremely surprised and happy with the fact that my parents took an active role in trying to help us pick out an urn. The funeral home also had remembrance pendants, and I fell in love with a silver pewter-covered glass vial that had a screw on the bottom that can hang on a necklace or be in a display case and hold some of Jack's ashes. Because of the price, I knew I couldn't get it since we had to pay for the cremation that we weren't expecting to have to pay for. My mother offered to buy it for me. I knew I would later regret saying no, even though I would never normally agree to let her buy me something that expensive, so I agreed. And I look forward to having that piece of Jack with me always, and I love it. I wish he could be here instead, though. The days following my parents' exit have been mashed together in one large blur. I wasn't lucky enough to skip my breast milk from coming in, though. I was actually surprised when it first happened, in total disbelief, actually. I thought I would be spared this additional reminder of losing Jack, but no. I was only 20 weeks. Who knew? Jack had mentioned that my brother Shane offered us an escape at his house in Wyoming if we were interested. This was exactly what we needed, and we were looking forward to getting the hell out of Dodge. We wanted to wait for Jack's ashes and for our apartment complex to fix our AC. It started leaking the night we got home from the hospital. We've also been waiting to be cleared by my doctor for travel, which happened today. I know going back to the doctor's office was going to be really hard. I had bonded with all the ladies there during my daily visits for my progesterone shots. They had become like family to me. They alone, let alone the possibility of sitting in the waiting area with pregnant women or children. My doctor had told us how upset all the ladies were when they heard the news of our loss. They had all shed tears and were heartbroken for us. When we arrived, I was surprised to see an empty waiting room. So relieved. I have no idea if this was luck or if they had scheduled it this way. Either way, I was so thankful. The nurse took my vitals and I was shocked to see I had lost 14 pounds. I knew I'd lost weight. I don't think I ate anything. I could tell by the way my pants were fitting. My doctor examined me and found my uterus was still at 8 weeks, but he was not worried. After my exam, the doctor told us all the test results came back, and I definitely, with no question, had an incompetent cervix. He said that there was absolutely nothing I could have done to prevent this. to believe that. He said that you don't start contracting until well after the cervix starts to dilate. So even if I had called the night before, or right when the contractions started, it wouldn't have made a difference. I know this was technically the second time he had told me this, but this time it finally freed my guilt. It finally freed my guilt I'd been holding since losing Jack. I thought so at the time. Even though everyone was telling me it wasn't my fault and that I couldn't have prevented it, there was always still that question in me. I'm not sure if I'll ever feel guilt-free. But it was definitely a freeing feeling, and I will try to hold on to that. And it didn't last long.